Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zero to Empire podcast. I have Andy Williams today, and he is a men and couples therapist. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about what inspired him to become a men and couples therapist, a coach, and much more. So stay tuned. And yeah, here's Andy Williams. And what actually inspired you to become a therapist and a coach? Is my first question to you.
Yeah. So there's probably two parts to that. One is I sought my own therapy and coaching as a young man and found the process to be incredibly inspiring for me and life changing for me. So there was my own personal experience having interacted with a therapist and with a coach. So I knew that I enjoyed being the client, so to speak. And I guess I always wondered what it was like to be in the other side of the relationship. The other part to that answer is, and how often is this the case? Well, I met a girl, and she was a little bit more established than me in our mid 20s. And I guess in order to convince her to stick around, I really needed to demonstrate a plan and that I had some goals and some vision for a life that I was creating. So I said, "Oh, I'm gonna be a therapist," and I applied to grad school just later on that week. So it's a little bit of a two-part answer for me. That it was I was inspired, and I found the work interesting, and also a little bit of practicality there, man. Sometimes we have to make some decisions real quick, like.
Yeah, that's definitely great coming back or like meeting your significant other
Yeah.
and everything changed ever since. And that's cool that you got into therapy and becoming a coach for sure. And can you actually tell us the story of a client who had a major breakthrough?
Yeah, well, okay. So one of the things as a therapist, I deal in HIPAA compliance and confidentiality. So I won't speak about a specific person, but I can definitely talk about themes of clients that I've seen and transitions that they have made in their life after our work together. And so I think about the themes of guys coming in and really fearful about becoming a new dad and figuring out the answer to the question of, am I going to be a better dad than what I experienced, or am I going to repeat the same patterns as my old man and his old man and that kind of thing? And so being able to walk down the road with guys to figure out the answer to that question and figure out what are the things that are blocking them, getting in the way of their own confidence in terms of becoming a new dad. So that's one of the things that I love doing, is helping people kind of unlock a side of them that maybe they haven't seen. The other piece in terms of like just a theme that I've seen over the years is people coming in with a very specific uh, set of problems or specific issues that have plagued them for months or years or even the majority of their life, and helping people to slowly. And I think that's also one of the things that we might talk about is therapy coaching. Oftentimes you don't see an immediate transition, but that after continued work and effort and kind of going back to what it is that is troubling you, you can see life changing results. So the themes that I see are just people unlocking a side of them that maybe they never actually knew that they had.
Yeah, that's very like you're changing people's lives undoubtedly. And it's really cool that like it's obviously everything that's worth it takes time.
Yeah.
And so how do you go about your approach to therapy and coaching that is different than the majority?
Yeah, I tend to be pretty direct in my style. There are various, I guess, modalities within therapy that take the approach that the client is the expert in their own life, and certainly I want to honor their experience and help them to gain a level of expertise, but I am going to ask directive questions. I do assign a lot of, I guess, homework, for clients in order to be able to, let's take what we talked about in session today. Let's put some things into practice. Let's put some things into motion. So I'm very action oriented in my style. Of course, there's a lot of learning, and of course, there's a lot of listening, and of course, there's a lot of emoting that can happen in a therapy session. But I am very action oriented and wanting to help people move through and move past what it is that brought them into therapy. And oftentimes I talk to people in a consultation or in those initial conversations with me that my goal is to actually work myself out of a job with you. And that's kind of an odd thing to say, maybe as a business owner. But the truth is that if I'm helping people to change their lives and if I'm helping people to move forward in the way that they want to, they are likely going to use my services, improve in their lives, reach some sort of a plateau, and then perhaps come back in the future, or maybe refer a friend, refer a family member, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's very important that you were just trying to make sure that they're set up for the long term and that you're not just trying to benefit from that. Like, obviously, you want them to see improvements and keep on going with their lives.
Yeah.
And what if you like your focus is on life transitions? And what's the biggest struggle that they usually face when it comes to men or women?
Yeah. Guys, I'll use some broad strokes kind of language here, right? Like, not every man has had this exact experience. So, bear with me in that. But boys are oftentimes not given the time or space or tools to explore our inner worlds, to learn how to reach out and create vast social networks, and to reach out to help or reach out for help, right? We're oftentimes taught as boys to kind of stuff our emotions. Men are tough. We don't talk about our feelings. Boys don't cry, right? And honestly, I talk to men a lot, and every guy has their story or multiple stories in terms of when they kind of learned that code. So for guys, a lot of the transition or a lot of the things that we are working on is really a baseline understanding of what are our emotions, how do those impact us, and how do we see those emotions or the lack of experience in expressing those emotions, how do they impact our relationships? How do we see that they impact our career trajectories, our communication styles and patterns, those kinds of things? So I oftentimes start very, very baseline with guys, kind of going through an exploration of what are the things that you feel. And a lot of times that results in a conversation where a guy's like, well, I don't really feel too much. But after some questions, after we dig a little bit, men are really able to identify with a little bit of guidance, with a little bit of help, like with some of the language, being able to identify what it is they feel, and even oftentimes where those emotions kind of like they feel it in their body, right? Because like sometimes I'll have a guy that'll say, "Well, I feel a little, anxious." Okay, well, where does that anxiousness sit in your body? And he can oftentimes say, "Oh, it's in my chest, or it's in my stomach, or that kind of a thing." And then that's a telltale sign for okay, the skills that we work on when you feel that. Here's when you can really utilize that tool.
Yeah, that's definitely very true. For not, I mean, obviously not all men out there, but I would say a good majority, in my opinion, as well. And when it comes to the couples that come into therapy, how do you get them to actually open up when it comes to these difference of communication, values, and like challenges that they come with?
Yeah. Well, that's a really insightful question because I think maybe a lot of the listeners or people that I talk to is like, well, if they go to therapy, aren't they ready to open up? Aren't they ready to talk about things? And maybe, yeah, but oftentimes there's at least one member of the couple who, arms crossed, I'm being drugged here, type of a thing. And again, broad strokes, that's oftentimes the guy if it's a heterosexual couple, oftentimes it's the dude. So couples really think that they are coming in to talk about a topical issue, right? Our sex life, money, communication. And that's kind of true, but actually what we're talking about is really the values underneath it all. So think about a couple who comes in and like their chief problem or what they say is like we're never on the same page about money, right? All we do is argue, bicker, fight about money. Okay, we're probably going to talk about money. We're probably going to talk about which one of you is the saver, which one of you is the spender, which one of you looks at the bank account once a year, which one of you looks at the bank account every hour, right? We're going to talk about those types of things. But ultimately, what we're going to get to is what did your parents teach you about money? What was the culture around money? Like, what's your money psychology, essentially? What's the story you tell yourself about your money, right? Because money is a very fascinating thing in that it's something that we all come into contact with and we all need to a certain degree, but it's a very emotional thing. And honestly, I think it's probably harder for a lot of couples to talk about their money than it is to talk about their sex life. But ultimately, when we get into these discussions, we move quickly past the topical thing and we move into what are the values underneath it. And that's where people really open up. That's where people kind of start to say, this is what your spending makes me feel like, or this is what it feels like when you reject my overtures. Does that make sense? So we very quickly get to the part where we're not actually talking about the thing that they came in to talk about. We're talking about the thing underneath the thing.
Yeah, finding the root problem is definitely very key, and that makes sense. Like because it stems from everything else. Like yeah, that makes 100%. And how do you actually go about structuring your therapy and coaching sessions when people come in and book a session with you?
Yeah, so therapy oftentimes looks a little more exploratory, right? Sometimes people come in and they know specifically what it is that they want to work with. I feel anxious and I want to feel less anxious, or I'm really depressed. And when I get depressed, I start drinking a lot and I know that that's not a pattern that I want. Okay, so there's a pathway there. And so we'll create some goals. We'll create some opportunities to kind of talk through skills, what are the things that we need to work on. So but therapy oftentimes can be a little bit more exploratory, and we're talking about, yeah, we have these goals, but oftentimes people will then bring in an additional thing and we can kind of splinter off and kind of work on childhood stuff or anything else that they want to bring in. So therapy, kind of think of like we're exploring the whole human and the whole human experience and process. Coaching is pretty laser focused. I have 3 to 6 month packages that I work with, mostly guys. I do work with some women, but we meet every other week. We have very kind of laser focused sessions in terms of what are the goals, what did you do with the assignments that were given last week? If you accomplished the tasks, great. How did they go? What did you learn from them? If you didn't get through those assignments, what were the blocks? What do we need to work on? So coaching tends to be pretty laser focused and kind of time sensitive. I typically work in 3 to 6 month packages with folks, whereas therapy, it can be ongoing, and there's a bit of a longer term lifespan in that type of a relationship, uh, whereas coaching is fairly time sensitive.
Yeah, it makes sense for the differences. And when it comes down to what you wish people knew more about therapy or with coaching, what would be that one thing that you wish that they knew?
I would say that people come in and they want life change. I 100% get that. And I want that for everybody that comes in. I always want for people to know and understand once we start to talk about some of the things that you need to talk about, things might feel a little bit worse for a period of time before you start to see the growth curve kind of trend upwards. An analogy that I often use is like, okay, if you haven't been to the gym in a year and you go and you do a workout, you're probably going to be sore the next day or a couple of days afterwards. that's actually an indicator that you did some work on your muscles. They tore down. Now they're, rebuilding themselves. And so that's actually a good sign. It's uncomfortable, but it's actually pointing us towards, hey, I'm doing the stuff that I need to be doing. Kind of similar with your emotions. If you've spent, think about the guy that has spent the vast majority of his life stuffing down his emotions, or creating a stoic external appearance. I never let anybody see what I'm thinking or feeling. And then the first time that he goes home to his spouse and he shares his feelings, is probably going to feel pretty scary. But by doing that and learning to kind of work through that, you're actually becoming the man that you want to become. So I guess, the TLDR is probably going to feel a little bit harder or uncomfortable at first, but the growth is right around the corner.
Yeah, just taking action and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations when it's the best way to improve is very like impactful in your life.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the challenges that or your outlook for the future of your therapy and coaching business, what are those ideas for yourself?
Yeah, so I'm actually in a new area. We moved from Los Angeles to Atlanta. I'm nearing signing a lease for some in person office space. And that'll be the first time in my career as a business owner in private practice where I've had proper office space. I've done everything virtual thus far, which has been cool. And I'll continue to offer virtual services, but being able to have an in-person experience, I think, opens you up to more people and also a different kind of relationship when you're in the same room. The other thing that I really am working towards, and it probably won't happen this calendar year, 2025, but it'll probably be in 2026, is retreat type settings for men. Probably not overnights to start with, but gatherings for men will probably do something in nature. So think like meeting somewhere at a trailhead in a national forest, do some sort of a hike that has some sort of a coaching element to it. Kind of a group type conversation, but an opportunity for men to connect, do something physically challenging, do something emotionally challenging, and kind of learn, by using the whole human experience. So that's something that I'll add into my offerings at some point, but probably not this year, probably 2026.
Yeah, well, congrats to you for getting a new office space and working towards that goal.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
that's really cool that you're going for retreats later on, like next year or however in the future. That'd be really cool to see. I haven't really heard anybody else doing that, so that's really
Mhm.
unique.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Where can they actually reach out to you if they would like to book a therapy session or a coaching session?
Yeah, fantastic. So I write every week on LinkedIn, so you can find me there pretty easily on my LinkedIn profile, and then also on my website, forwardmomentum.io. You have access to my calendar there to set an appointment, do a consultation, and also kind of read some of my blog entries as well.
Awesome. Perfect, Andy. Everyone go check him out. Go book a session with him. And yeah, for everyone watching, thanks so much for listening in or watching for Zero to Empire. And I'll see everyone in the next episode.